Hey everyone, welcome to my presentation. Today we'll be learning about the psychological impacts of deportation. My name is Jocelyn Pizarro and I really hope that you enjoy this presentation. So the focus of this paper is deportation in mixed status families. And by mixed status families, I mean children that are American citizens who have at least one parent that is an immigrant or an undocumented immigrant. Prior research has shown that family dynamics has changed when there is deportation or risk of detention or deportation. There are negative psychological impacts on the child. They may cause behavioral problems as well as social isolation and other issues such as that. Many professionals are also affected by this, the legal system, healthcare professionals, social workers. And so how does this impact social workers in particularly? Well, ethnic minorities are growing rapidly and about 80% of them are Hispanic. So they're going to continue to grow within the next decade or so. They will be the majority. There's a lot of children in care when parents are deported or when they are detained, cases come in because of neglect. And so children are left to the foster care system that's already overworked. There's mental health professionals, there's a need for them, and it's continuously growing. And another issue would be their availability to service these children or teenagers that are affected by this. So the research question particularly is how are Mexican citizen adolescents' mental health affected by parental deportation in mixed status families? So in my opinion, I think my hypothesis would be their mental health is affected, behaviors are changed, family dynamics are negatively affected and changed by deportation. And what I mean is by family dynamics, you have the parent that's left, or if there is a two-parent household, they have to get more work, find ways to provide for their families, and have less time to take care of the needs of their children. Specifically, my independent variable would be deportation, and my dependent variable would be the emotional, behavioral, and psychological impacts deportation has on their families. So we'll measure that. Um, so deportation, in my opinion, will negatively affect the dependent variable, which is emotional, behavioral, and psychological of adolescents. In order to study this, what we're going to do, what I plan to do would be an explanatory sequential design. So basically it'll be, we'll gather some quantitative data first and then follow it by some qualitative interviewing or intensive interviewing just to rule out certain variables that can be affected. And we'll talk about that later on. And so what we'll do is a quasi-experimental non-equivalent group design. That'll be, or measure the quantitative part of it. It'll have an independent control group and another group that is exposed to the variable that will change the dependent variable. And then for the qualitative, we'll do intensive interviewing just to rule out certain reliabilities that can be affected by different life events. But we'll explore that later on. So the population that will be focused on are youth ages 13 through 18 that are Mexican of origin, and they have one parent that is undocumented, or at least one undocumented parent. So in terms of sampling, what we'll do is purposive because we need to make sure that there's strict criteria to assess this population, and we'll do snowball sampling. And the reason we'll do snowball sampling is because there's such a small amount of people that can be found in the area that have or meet this criteria. It'll help if they know other people that meet the same to give a larger sample size. So the way we'll do it is that we'll obtain samples by finding geographical areas that have middle school and high schools, juvenile justice centers, and healthcare with a high Mexican population. And we'll talk to administrative personnel, gather just data from the people that know the demographics of that area, and filter them to be able to participate in the study. In terms of measurement, what we'll do is we'll do a nominal survey to screen the certain demographics and to make sure that the participants are able to meet the demographics we're looking for the study. In order to measure the dependent variables, what we'll do is a pre-test survey that has interval questions to measure levels of anxiety, depression, and questions of that such, just to get a baseline. And then what we'll do is do a post-test survey. These will both be addressed to the that group A and group B. One will have deportation that or detention to help us measure what the effects are after the fact. And so that will help us measure quantitatively. Now, what we'll do for qualitatively, we'll do an interview after the post-test survey is done to just screen out certain factors that can affect anxiety, depression, and things of that such that could be misconstrued with other life events. So, in terms of reliability in pre and post test measures, there's always a risk. It's always dependent upon the honesty of the people that are taking the survey. There's not really a set yes or no questions, and the sliding scale is it's also determined upon the maturity of those that are taking the test. In terms of the validity, again, it depends on the answers. So if somebody answers that they are anxious or nervous and they're not, then it's not going to be valid. So it's all going to be dependent upon the answers that are given. With this type of study, there's always going to be certain limitations that we can't really control. For example, there's time constraints. There's not really a time or a specific point in time in anyone's life that they can determine, yes, I'm going to have my parent detained or deported, and there's no way to really predict for that. There's time constraints because detention or deportation is a long process at times. It's not something that can happen overnight. And people are going to really be open and honest sometimes because of that. It's so sensitive, and perhaps they don't want to talk about it, and they don't want to just share that type of information with anybody. There's also in the sampling part of it and validity, life events happen that can also play a part in being able to determine, like, what's this cause, what's this anxiety increasing, or is this depression increasing in a teenager because of deportation, or is it because that they had a family member pass away, or they're having a hard time at school or being bullied. There's always a fear, and it's very limited by the population within that area. For example, to make it valid, are we going to have a large enough sample size or people that are willing to give this information to be able to make that determination on the whole population? We don't want to overgeneralize. In terms of internal validity, there's always changes in adolescence. They can think one thing today and think another thing tomorrow, and some may not even know how they feel about certain things, so they might just answer in the way that they feel that the survey wants a response. Another thing is internal influences, like how do they think about depression or anxiety? Are they going to want to admit that they have depression or anxiety or social isolation, or are they even going to want to talk about the teenagers are very secretive in the first place. So it might be hard to gather that information if they just might take it like they take a test. In terms of measurement, it's really it relies heavily on the answers from participants. They may not understand fully what's being asked of them. They might not understand fully the question. And they may not ask, hey, I need help with this, or be honest about it. So there are a lot of limitations based on there's so many life changes going on. So it may not be as reliable as we would like it to be. But that's all a part of it, right? A part of taking surveys. You always take that risk. In conclusion, I do believe that deportation changes many family dynamics. Children take certain roles up. For example, if you have the oldest child may take the role of another parent, have to take jobs, perhaps not be able to finish school because they need to provide for their family. They may feel responsible for that. There's definitely, I would think, would be psychological implications, social isolation, behavioral problems in teenagers, especially since they already have enough going on in their lives of being a teenager. If this is true, there's a high increase in need for mental health providers because, like I said, the ethnic minority will be the larger minority in the near future. And if these things are happening, if they're being negatively impacted, we're going to need more healthcare providers. We're going to be impacted with the child welfare system. If more children are being taken into care because they're citizens and their parents are being deported for whatever petty crimes is going on or detained, we're going to have children in the already heavily laden foster care system, and they're going to need more needs and more services perhaps than other children because separation or legal intervention is already a traumatic event for a child. The judicial system will be impacted. There will be changes that may have to be made to keep families together, and things of that nature. If this proves not to be true, then previous research needs to be replicated and checked for reliability. Laws can continue to be enforced to reduce immigrant families from staying. Thank you for watching.